Hello, I'm Josh Stover, and for the past 4 months of my senior year of design school, I've been working to make adventure easy. First, a little bit about myself. I love motorcycles and the freedom they provide, and I happen to grow up on a farm, so I had the opportunity to learn how to ride that little A.D.V motorcycle on the top left, and then later got a dirt bike that you see next. And then there's a couple project bikes I worked on, and then a 250 dual sport in the bottom left, and then the bike I currently ride, which is a Ducati. To some people, all these pictures are just dirt bikes, but for this project, we need to look a little bit closer. Now this is just a dirt bike. You're expected to ride it standing up a lot of the time. It's light and nimble, and not road legal. It's got those knobby tires that aren't DOT approved. But if you've ever thought you saw a hooligan driving their dirt bike on the road, maybe you did. There's a lot of idiots out there. But a dual sport has DOT approved tires, lights, and a license plate, even though it might be covered in mud. Then there's the adventure bike. This is what you get when you combine a dirt bike with a touring bike. And these things are beasts. They're heavy, huge engines, and I would not suggest you buy one unless you have some serious experience. Next, we have a supermoto, and these are not for sale. They are dual sports or dirt bikes with convergent kits that have these tires swapped out for street tires. And at first, you might think that's ridiculous. Why would you limit yourself to the road when you're riding a dirt bike? But people love them for their high torque and high acceleration, which makes them a blast for getting around town. Lastly, we actually have a brand called Zero. They were the first fully electric motorcycle company to start mass producing electric bikes, and they got their notoriety from winning off-road races with bikes that they built. And this is where they are now. This is the DSR from 2022, and it's a sort of mid-weight adventure bike. But there's a problem. Every single one of these bikes is uncomfortable, and here is why. I think it's mainly because they all evolved from the dirt bike, and initially, the expectation was that the seat is just a little more shock absorption. They only made it a little bit better than sitting directly on the frame, because you're not expected to sit all the time. You're expected to stand. But I realized during this project that because you're kind of wrapping yourself around a rocket, the seat can become a bit of an afterthought. The engine components usually take precedence, even though the seat is the main point of contact for a person. Or it could be because the seat is often the last part that goes on the bike. So some of the area that should have been used for the seat gets stolen by other components. But the thing is, with adventure bikes and dual sports and supermotos also, the expectation has changed. We want to ride those on the road and go for longer distances on just flat, even road. And the seat is not good enough. Reason number 3 and 4 seat design is struggling is because life imitates art, and every new concept and show bike has a super thin seat or no seat at all. And I agree, it looks super cool, but I'm not buying a bike that causes my legs to fall asleep after 20 to 30 minutes of riding, unless I'm using it for super short rides, or it's literally just for show. And that's why so many people switch to adventure bikes once they have some experience. But what if you're just starting out? Then you're stuck with choosing between an adventure bike, which is way too large and powerful for a beginner. You're going out of your comfort zone using a bike that could crush you, or you're choosing a dual sport, which, as I said before, has a seat that literally wasn't meant to be sat on. So now you know why I chose to redesign a dual sport. But why an electric dual sport? Well, they are economic, powerful, and beginner friendly. Basically, they make adventure easy. I'm going to talk about built-in batteries in comparison to swappable batteries for a second. The icons below represent a built-in battery system. The biker on the line represents the ride time or distance, and the big timer represents the charge time. And that's really the only option when it comes to most of Zero's bikes. In my opinion, Zero has missed the mark on two of the most important aspects of a bike. The battery being trapped behind the frame isn't great, and the seat isn't great either because their background isn't off-roading, or maybe because they're taking the cheap route. I'm not sure. If you look at the illustrations of a ride with a swappable battery, below, the turnover sign represents a stop at a battery station, and these types of stations are already being tested in China and in Japan. But until these stations reach us, I'd expect the biker community to come together and create some sort of sharing community over an app platform, or charge like any other EV. There is a trade-off you can see in the diagram in total capacity. So with a built-in battery system, you're going to have a larger total capacity, but once it's dead, it's dead. You're going to be stuck there a while waiting for your bike to charge. However, with a swappable system, you are going to get less total capacity. Like I said, there's that trade-off. But once you, if you can make it to a swap out station or a friend's house with a similar battery, you can swap out and you can keep on going and just, continue the cycle and keep on adventuring. Another difference is when your batteries finally croak, like all batteries do at some point. They lose their ability to hold a charge. It is much easier to just swap out like you've been used to, rather than go to a mechanic and have your bike disassembled and rebuilt to get new batteries. But the question that made up my mind for me is what battery style allowed for the most adventure, the most exploration, and the most fun? And that is obviously the swappable batteries. There's a lot of other benefits to electric bikes too. The one you're probably most aware of is there's no need for gas. And the implication of that is that EVs charge while you sleep. It means many owners never have to go through a gas station, or in our case, a swap station. There's less wasted energy than with a heavy car carrying around all that extra sheet metal, especially if there's only one person in it. And then motorcycles are easier to park and store, of course. And something you might not be aware of is that there is next to no maintenance required on electric motorcycles. And we'll get into that more later. Now, what is the key to a good adventure? Maybe it's the torque accessible on even a small back road, or the freedom offered by the quiet hum of a motor, or maybe the versatility and the ability to take to the road and then go find a trail through a forest, or maybe the comfortable neutral stance that adventure bikes do best. Then again, maybe it's the easy to learn aspect of EVs. Electric motorcycles actually only have one gear, so if you can ride a bike, you can ride an electric motorcycle. And the lack of maintenance is a huge benefit. I first heard about Startup Weekend around the end of my research phase. It's a 72-hour competition where professionals and students alike come together to compete to create the best startup company they can in teams over just one weekend. So when I heard about it, of course, my first thought was, what if I pitch my capstone and I get a team of people to do my research for me for that weekend? And to my surprise, it kind of worked. So here's my team. Simon, Eve, Ryan, Michael, and Wesley were my team. And as you can see, it was a pretty well-rounded team. We had marketing and engineers and all sorts on the team. And for the first 24 hours, we tried to make my outlandish concept a reality. but it wasn't going to happen, so we had to pivot and make something else out of it. We still addressed the same problem, and we still had the same goal to make adventure easier, so we presented an aftermarket seat cushion to the judges. As a team, we looked at the current options, and we rated them on a scale of comfort, convenience, and conformity. So if you see that option on the left, it's very thin and does not provide any cushion at all. And then the next option, it's a little bit better. It's more about shock absorption though. That option in the middle is a little different. That's for motocross riders, and it is more comfortable, but not very convenient. And those last two options are more comfortable, but they don't really fit to a dual sport style seat. If you remember what a dirt bike looks like, it kind of has this long banana shape. So this is what we came up with in one weekend. We're providing improved ergonomics and an easy installation to any dual sport, enduro, and dirt bike with comfort, convenience, and conformity. The secret to our solution was in the 5-layer system. We planned on having rubber grip strips that adhered to the existing seat, a rigid expansion of the seating area with a rubber layer, memory foam and cotton batting for cushion, and a durable fabric to keep it all together. The market research was the most beneficial for my capstone because it applied to both the tangent I went on during that weekend and my actual capstone project, because of course the problem and goal were still the same. Over 30 interviews were conducted online and in person, and they all loved the idea, just like this text message shown. And 13.1 million motorcycle riders are in the USA today, and a third of the industry is off-roading. So that brings it to about 4.3 million potential customers. And adventure motorcycles are the fastest growing style in the market today. At the end of the weekend, we got third place, which was awesome, but we weren't quite ready to quit our day jobs and go all in, so the project died there. But I did get a cool glass as a trophy and the assurance that people want better seats for their adventure. Which brings me back to my outlandish concept. My capstone is designed to be produced 10-ish years from now. But who is going to buy this bike? And I could see two perspectives on this topic. I could see it from the adventurist and the hooligan. First, the adventurist. He grew up on a dirt bike and is ready to take to the roads. So he's experienced and he's also intrigued by the power of electric motorcycles. He also happens to live in a scenic rural area and wants to explore and see more of it. So he's basically me growing up. Then there's the hooligan. His main reason for buying a bike is to make his commute to work more fun and fuel efficient. He's a beginner and he's intrigued by the style and versatility of a dual sport. Probably a supermoto guy. He lives in the city and finds adventure on the roads and alleys in his city. But he doesn't have a garage, so he is definitely going to appreciate the lack of maintenance required. This mood board is a visual representation of the heritage and goals of this project, and it helped guide me in my sketch ideation. In the beginning, I drew my bikes around the battery and just outlined the different components I would need to make a full composition. There was a sense of familiarity with the V-twin style swappable battery, where the battery would just jut out from the side of the bike. As I progressed, I began to flesh out compositions that had the most promise, while others remained unfinished. And I liked the thin, almost briefcase-sized batteries in this sketch. This bike also played a very influential role in my final design, with the way there is a line between the steering column and the back wheel. And eventually I found a bit of a groove, and I needed to break out of it and look for other ways to improve my design. So I took a moment to learn how to write a prompt for an AI, specifically Midjourney. After sifting through a lot of unusable AI generated junk, I did eventually get a decent batch, and I photoshopped the best parts together to get another viable option. In Procreate, I tweaked my design until I had something I liked. I wasn't going to spend the time drawing in forced perspective because, motorcycles are insanely hard to draw in perspective, and, anyway, I can do it, it just takes more time. And why would I do it when I have Gravity Sketch? In addition to being a great sketching tool, it is a great tool for getting a sense of proportion because you can see it as if it were right there. Specifically with being able to see how to pull the battery out of the bike, Gravity Sketch was very informative. Oh, and if you don't know, Gravity Sketch is a program run through the Meta Quest 2, which is the VR system that you set over your face. I brought together a 3D model from Gravity Sketch and an isometric view from Procreate, both into Rhino, which was a new program for me during this project. I chose to learn it for the purpose of doing this complex sub-D modeling, and I made this electric dual sport. I want to say comfort isn't all about cushion, it's also about stance or posture. A dual sport has a neutral stance, so you're not hunched over the gas tank like a sport bike where you don't have mobility to look all the way around you. And you're also not lounging like you are in some touring bikes or Harleys. Cushion is important though. So you can see I've dedicated a large portion of the bike to the seat. It's deep because of the cushion desired. It's wide, so it has more surface area on it to sit. And it's long because of a dual sport riding style, where if you're going off-roading, it is very helpful to be able to shift your weight forward and backwards. The V-twin style battery placement allows for easy access, and the narrow profile is important for those that want to use the bike to its full potential, and that is going off-roading down a single wide trail through the forest. You don't want a very wide bike to get caught on bramble and whatnot. And if we're going to call this a dual sport, I have to call out the tall suspension and knobby tires. And I'd also guess that this bike would be about 285 pounds, which is actually less than your average dual sport. The batteries were not the focus of the project, but I did have to sink a lot of time into researching swappable batteries because the bike is built around them. And the fact that they are swappable is what makes more adventure possible. And it's briefcase style, so it's easier to carry to a swap out station, or if you wanted to mount the batteries onto the multi-purpose rail you see on the back of the bike. The same rail could be used for storage bags to extend your adventure, and the carbon fiber belt is a common addition on e-bikes today, and it means you don't have to lube your chain regularly. This motorcycle houses an air-cooled, high-efficiency, radial flux, interior, permanent high-temp magnet, brushless motor that puts out 70 horsepower and about 116 pound-feet of torque. And then we have the UI. With an electric bike, the rider has the ability to easily customize the ride style he or she prefers. And for a beginner, that means they're probably going to want to pull back the amount of torque the bike has, so that they don't put too much twist on the throttle and send themselves flying off the bike. And for an experienced rider, it means you can set multiple ride styles, where maybe one is a sports setting, another is an off-road sports setting, and another is more of a casual setting. In conclusion, adventure is uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be.